Comic Book Savant, Comic Sense, Comic Book Collector's Guide. Welcome back to the Comic Book Savant podcast. I'm your host, James Harris. This episode is going to be a Comic Sense episode, and it's going to be the Comic Book Collector's Guide. It's been a while since I've done a Comic Book Collector's Guide episode, but this one I'm going to be going over and doing a review of DC Universe Infinite for 2021. Now, if you're unfamiliar with DC Universe Infinite, it used to be called DC Universe. The service was different in the first iteration of the service that came out a couple years back now. It's probably been 3 years. It got rebranded a few months back as DC Universe Infinite and launched. I want to say it launched with the rebranding in February, if I'm not mistaken, of 2021. I had been a member of DC Universe from its inception. Well, no, not right away, but because they did a whole beta thing that different people had access to before it originally launched. But I think from the time it launched to the public, I had been a member of DC Universe, and I had mixed feelings, and I've reviewed that in the past. And I had, my thoughts and feelings about it. But I think what made DC Universe unique was that it had a video component as well, and you had access to the DC animated films. You had a limited library of DC live action films as well, but due to just different deals, not every single one was on there. So it was very unique for what it was at the price point. But now it's totally, they've taken all the video component away from what was DC Universe, and that stuff moved over to HBO Max. And now this is just your standard kind of DC centric online subscription service for you to read, have access to their books online. Just to give you a breakdown of what the service is now is DC Universe Infinite. The subscription plans are $7.99. That's before tax for their monthly subscription, or you could pay $74.99 plus tax for the annual subscription. You have access to over about 25,000 and growing comics from DC, Vertigo, DC Black Label, and Milestone Media as well. You have exclusive DC Universe Infinite originals and an expanded collection of backlist classics. You get new titles just 6 months after the print release date, and digital first titles appear about 3 months after the release. And you also have exclusive access to DC fan events as well. And they do a 7-day free trial, but that's only if you've never signed up for the service previously. So say if you did a free trial when it was DC Universe, how their system is set up, it still tracks it. Because I ran into that problem when I signed up for it this time, because I was an annual subscriber to DC Universe, but they cut off all those renewals, and you had to kind of convert over to DC Universe Infinite. And I was more into it for the video side of it. So when they remove that, and I already get through my phone plan, I get HBO Max for free. That's kind of, I never converted over to DC Infinite, but I wanted to try it out. It's been a few years since I reviewed the service. So since the new branding, I wanted to see how the service changed. So I thought maybe I could just do a 7-day free trial. Nope, because I had signed up to DC Universe previously. I just straight billed me for a month when I try to go in and select the free trial option. So be aware of that. If you've ever subscribed and or did a free trial with the previous DC Universe, you won't be able to get the 7-day free trial. It's only for totally new signups, which is kind of weird. Or you can just sign up under probably a new email address. Maybe I'm not going to do all that just to get it. It's $7.99 a month, so I paid for it. So some of the issues that I had previously with DC Universe that were that a lot of things have definitely been improved upon since they've converted the service to DC Universe Infinite is that the content was way lighter, because at first with DC Universe, they didn't give you access to a full library like this. They had a curated, rotating list of books that they would bring on and off the service, as far as the comics as well with the movies. Yeah, and I felt like that was the biggest downfall that I complained about in a lot of my notes. I pulled some of my, my notes from last time. The curated content was really the biggest, I felt like one of the biggest downfalls to the service, and that has fully been corrected. Again, the issues I had with far as the movies and things like that is no longer an issue, because all of that has moved over to HBO Max. I thought that's what made it stand out, but I mean, again, they wanted to focus on the main thing, and they had to build up. Warner Brothers had this streaming service they were launching with HBO Max, and they needed content, so it made sense that that moved. And it was kind of the tea leaves, once that was announced, was on the wall, that either DC Universe was going to get totally just decimated and closed out, or it was going to become what it has become, more traditional, like your Comixology Unlimited and or your Marvel Unlimited services. And that's what it did. And I feel like I didn't know how I felt about it at first, because I liked the uniqueness of it, but it works for what it is, for sure. I'm still not a huge fan of the website user interface. It's clunky and it's not user friendly, I feel like, at all, when it comes to navigating the site and finding things easily. But they do have other things, like once you do find what you're looking for, you can set up reading list and bookmarks and things of that nature, which is good. But I just, and this is solely from someone that has worked in IT and have a degree in web design and has worked in that field, that user interface is everything. So when I talk about that stuff, sometimes when you hear me talk about these things, that's the side of my brain it comes from. Always look at the user experience and the user interface, and how quickly and how easily someone can navigate a site. It's just bred in me from what I was taught, and what I try to execute. One thing that I don't like, that I love about Comixology, that I wish was here, is that there were no trades, and I search for trades or collected editions. I didn't see any sort of them on the service unless I'm missing it. And I literally searched like graphic novels, and I really didn't find any. And I've learned, especially when it's huge story arcs and things like that, I like reading digitally and having access to the graphic novels, because a lot of times it gets annoying, especially when you really get into reading a storyline that you got to start going to the next issue, and you got to flip through. I just like flowing with the story and read it to its completion. So I wish I hope, or my only suggestion is down the road, that they eventually make omnibuses in collected editions available on the service. But I give them this, that they do a really great job, that they do have storylines curated in a proper reading order and collected in a reading order for you. So if it's a certain storyline that you're looking for, you can search it in the search bar and you can find it and you can bookmark it and they have it in the proper reading order for you. So that's kind of dope. I found over my years of subscribing to these different services and reading, even for me, I've rebought stuff, even on Comixology, because certain times it's easier to read the collected edition than, okay, I read this issue, okay, I got to find the next issue, or they recommend the next issue, you got to click. Those extra clicks when you're flowing in a story can kind of just hinder your overall reading experience. So though I like what they're doing in lieu of, it would just make more sense if they had those digitally, and they have those files, because you can buy them on Comixology. So why wouldn't you just make them available on your service that people are paying for anyway? It doesn't make any sense to me, but I hope that's something down the road that they fix. Overall, I feel the service is more geared for diehard DC Comics fans. Um, Even though I've complained about the pricing previously about the service, I feel at this point it's well worth its price now with the improvements they've made to the service. In this is when you look at the kind of landscape of the different services you have, Comixology, that's about $5.99 a month, and you don't have the full scope of, you have DC, as a part of that service, and you have a limited library of DC comics. It's growing, but it's not 25,000 plus and growing constantly. It's way smaller. So if you're a diehard fan, or it's definitely for, in the changing times and the landscape of how expensive comics are nowadays, when you go to a comic book store and buy them, it's no fault of the comic book stores at all. I recently experienced this. I went into a comic book store, and I bought 3 books, and I spent I think like 20-30 bucks, you know what I mean, for 3 comics. For that same 30, it might have been like 31 bucks or 20 something bucks, something stupid. And I was just like, yo, for that amount of money, I could subscribe to Comixology, Marvel Unlimited, and DC Universe Infinite for a month, and read way more than 3 comics for the same amount of money, probably with some change left over. So it's changing where, if you're just a fan of the different services in general, you can subscribe to all 3 to kind of cover the spectrum of all your comics. I don't necessarily think, personally, I'm to that point. I still kind of prefer Comixology, but I feel like this is a really solid service, and I think it's changed for me from when I even subscribed to it before to now, that I think it is definitely a value in the service. And with any of the subscription services, if you're willing to wait that 6 months gap that they talk about from books being printed and released to being able to read them as part of your subscription on the service, it's well worth it, and you're going to save a ton of money. But I know some people are still physical collectors. Again, I don't classify myself as a collector as much anymore as I'm a comic fan and reader. So long as I have access to the content to read it or reference it when I'm doing research or something like that, that means the most to me than just collecting the physical books. So if that is not your issue and you're just wanting to read, it is a more cost-effective way to read comics than, buying them at some of these prices of $4.99, $5.99, $9.99 an issue. It's a lot. That's a lot for just one issue, when you can sign up for a service like this and read a comic every day or multiple comics every day for the cost of one book or 2 even, So it is definitely something to consider. So I'm way higher on the service than I once was before. But that's all the thoughts and comments that I have for this service in this episode. I definitely think it's well worth it, if I didn't make that clear. But with that being said, that's all I have for you guys for this episode. As always, you can reach out to me either at my email, which is comicbooksavant@gmail.com, or Instagram or Twitter at comicbooksavant. Also, we have the Facebook group, which is the Comic Book Society, Comic Book Savant Society, on Facebook. You can go there. It's an open group, public group, so you can join as well. If you like the content that I create and you would like to support, I also have a Patreon, which you can find over at patreon.com/Comic Book Savant. And all the links to everything that I just mentioned, you can find at comicbooksavant.com. All the links to everything I just mentioned, all there in one place. So that's all I have for you guys for this episode. As always, I hope you guys are staying safe out there and taking care of yourselves. And until next time, you guys take care, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.